The Sexual Practices of Quodoushka with Amara Charles here today on the Universal Learning Series radio show. I'm your host, Sandy Andrew. Welcome. The practice of Quodoushka offers practical guidance on sex, intimacy, and relationships, as well as how to reach higher levels of orgasm and sexual ecstasy. Working with the healing power of sexual union and orgasm, this practice offers a path to repair emotional wounds and sexual insecurities, revive monotonous relationships, and discover the sweet medicine of sex. Amara Charles has taught Quodoushka sexuality workshops since 1990. She is the author of Sexual Agreements, Aching to Open, and Erotic Touch for Two. Please visit Amara Charles' sensual website at amaracharles.com. And hello, Amara. Thanks for joining us here today.
Hi, Sandy. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, your book starts off with talking about the legacy of Quodoushka. So why don't you talk about that for a bit, please?
Well, first of all, I want to say that you say it very well. That's always people's first question is, how do you say Quodoushka? So
I'm trying to say it right.
You did great. The legacy of Quodoushka, it dates back many hundreds and some say thousands of years, beginning in 1250 AD in Oaxaca. So it comes from the Mesoamerican traditions and, the Mayan and Toltec cultures. And as it's taught today in its modern form, the legacy of Quodoushka is also that it has been taught worldwide, around the world, for over 30 years now. And I've been teaching Quodoushka workshops for about 25 years myself.
Okay. Now, in your book, you talk about unlocking sexual conditioning, and I really found that interesting, and it struck me. I thought, wow, this is a good one. Why don't you talk about that, please? Well,
sexual conditioning is everything that we've been taught. It's how we've been trained to react sexually. It includes, both the wonderful things about, how we just innately love to be touched and how we naturally are connected with people and we want to embrace and we want to kiss and we want to make love and so forth. So our conditioning is not only the negative aspects, it's also everything we've learned that's beautiful. The negative aspects of our conditioning are the places where we really go to sleep sexually. We get into what other people have told us. We fall back into old patterns of disconnecting, of having distance with our lovers, of, being too tired, too busy, to whatever, to make the time to really connect in a loving and caring way.
Amara, do you think there, in the 20th century and now in the 21st century, there's been a smearing of sex and all its natural benefits to us?
Well, we certainly in the West here have a long history of putting down sexuality, and in the spiritual world to disconnect sexuality from anything spiritual. So one of the beautiful features of Quodoushka is that we say that our sexuality is everything. It's our spirituality. Our sex and our spirituality are one and the same, that we were born from an act of sex. And so our natural sexuality has been, as you say, constrained and put down and repressed. And one of the main reasons for this, Sandy, is that if you can control a person's sexuality, if you can keep them dull, if you can keep them, interested in just, quick fixes, if you can keep sexuality as something, not to be talked about, it's not in our education system. We'll talk about that later. If you can keep people's sexuality down and repressed, then the guilt, the shame, the blame, all of the misconceptions around sex keep people way diminished, and their sexual energy, their life force energy is suppressed. And if you keep a person's sexual energy down, then their creativity suffers and their passion for life suffers. The repression of sexuality is the major reason behind abusive behavior, perversion, all kinds of misuses of sexual energy. And that really comes from being repressed.
We were talking about the oppression, and you were saying about the benefits of sex and sexuality for folks, and how it oppresses their creative qualities in life.
Yes, and Quodoushka, the major message of Quodoushka is that our sexuality is natural, healthy, and it's sacred. It's a thing to be celebrated.
Okay. Do you think that some of that oppression is because couples and people they have sex for free, essentially? They don't need to pay anybody. Nobody makes a profit of it. And there's other things in the market that can give you a quick fix, to use that term at the beginning. Do you think that has something to do with it, or part of it?
Well, what I'm not sure what you mean. You're saying that sexuality is free. I think sexuality should.
That's right, Amara. It's like meditation. It's like meditation. You can meditate for free, but Wall Street can't control it, so they're not interested in it. It can't be that good. It can't be that great. But here's a pill I can give you. It's going to make you brilliant. And for the rest of the day, and by the way, you only have to pay me $19 for the first 3 months. All right? So that's
I see where you're going. I see where you're going. Well, yes, meaning that it's hard to sort of capitalize on the energy of sex itself because everyone has it and it is free. Yeah. Nonetheless, as you know, all media, makes quite a bit of profit on sexual allure and sexual attraction, right, and selling products through sex. So there's lots of money to be made through sex. I think the repression is. It stems from different religious beliefs. It stems from the belief that our sexual energy is somehow less than, is not something that you can just talk openly about, joyously about, freely about. There's many reasons for repression and suppression of sexuality, and people. What I like to say is, that we're like weeds, that even though we may have been, incredibly repressed and put down, those cracks in the sidewalk, is this, we grow through anyway. I mean, sex is such a powerful energy. It's where we came from. And so we are going to, have sex. And no matter what kind of a background you've had, no matter how much, conditioning you've had that has told you that it's not okay, people seem to be going right on ahead and having a lot of sex anyway. The question is, how can we have, much more fulfilling, much more satisfying, much more deeply expressed passion? What can we do? Because these things are not taught.
Indeed. Now, on that note, then, Amara, you talk about sexual choices and sexual preferences in your book.
That is a huge subject. I mean, I've been, talking with some people, and when I say I'm a sex educator, their perception of sex is that, when you're talking about sexual education, is, well, you're either straight or you're bi, and that's the whole of sex education. I mean, what else is there to know, right? And so, when you're talking about sexual preferences, Quodoushka says is that when you come into life, the way that you would like to learn, the way you'd like to grow as a human being is you're going to have certain preferences. You may choose to be with the opposite sex. You may choose to be with someone of the same sex. And what Quodoushka says is that all of those sexual preferences, sexual choices are equally beautiful, and they are indeed your choice of how you can best learn and grow in this lifetime for you.
Okay. All right, and you talk about the light and dark arrows of sex. What does that mean?
Well, that is one of my favorite chapters of the book. And when we have dark arrows about sex, it means that we have attachments. And so there's certain things that we like and certain things we have to be turned on. There's certain attachments that we have that we always have an orgasm in this way. You know, you go into the bedroom, you turn off the lights, you put the blankets on, and that's how you have sex. And so, you're attached to that expression of yourself. And that is not necessarily bad, but it is very limited. So these attachments, they're called dark arrows because they turn into needs and dependencies, comparisons, expectations, and then, you can then even have what we call the mask of self-pity, where, you feel sorry for yourself. Perhaps you can't find a partner. Perhaps, you are, stuck in a relationship that you don't like. So you have self-pity. Those would be some of the dark arrows. The idea here is that there's actually 21 arrows, and you can either choose a dark arrow of attachment and react to any situation the way you always have. You get turned off, you get rejected, and then you go into some kind of reaction, and then, you feel self-pity, or, you just withdraw. That would be an example of a dark arrow. A light arrow starts with self-acceptance, where you say, I am just fine the way I am. I accept myself. And that turns into the light arrow of self-pleasure, that it's indeed okay to have pleasure. And that really is the basic idea of Quodoushka, is that down deep, it's really okay to have pleasure. When we have pleasure, that turns into the light arrow of self-love. And this turns into abundance and prosperity and freedom, so that you can begin to pick up the light arrows and receive the gifts of your expression, so that you can enjoy much more passion, much more pleasure, and you can walk as what we call a balanced human being that expresses their emotions, their mind, their body, their spirit, and their sexuality in an integrated way, all together in a flowing, beautiful expression with a full life. And that includes just a natural expression of your sexuality.
Amara, upon reviewing your website and your work in general, I got the very strong impression that you've helped thousands of people in your life discover sexual passion. Am I right in that?
Well, thank you. I certainly have helped a lot of people. I think I help them discover new things about their sexual passion. What I find, Sandy, is that most people have sexual passion. It's just kind of dormant. It's kind of lurking, and it needs some, permission, not to go wild and crazy and harm yourself or others, but to, learn how to express your sexual energy in a loving and caring and creative manner. So, yes, I have helped people discover many things about themselves, and because our sexual energy is at the core, if you repress that sexual energy and it's put away in a little box and it's tied down and it's just not naturally expressed, if you tie down your sexual energy, it's just very hard to be fully expressed as a human being. When your sexual energy is happening and when you're really humming and purring, whether you're a man or a woman, when you know how to really get deeply connected with your own sexual energy, because that's where the Quodoushka starts. It's with yourself. When you get connected with yourself, your sexual core energy, there are many other things that become available to you. It's like you have a reservoir of natural energy. So, yes, I've helped a lot of people, and yes, I guess you could say thousands of people. And now with the book coming out, I hope it to be many, many more people will hear about the teachings of Quodoushka, because they're amazing.
All right. Well, it's a certainly intriguing title, regardless of how you pronounce it or how people think you pronounce it. The cover of the book is very inviting, and I have a copy of it here for the listener, and it's very detailed, but it's also very natural, and it's And it's written with a sense of helping folks discover what they already have.
Yes,
I think so.
That's
anyway.
a great way of putting it. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yes. I like to say that. Yes, it's helping people discover what they already have. It's about really remembering who we truly are. That's the whole secret. It's not like you have to go out and buy something or go out and, find something. We already have all we need with regards to our sexual energy. We just have to take off a few layers and coats that are, covering it up. And believe me, people that come to the workshops, and hopefully, everyone who reads the book, they just feel a feeling of liberation where, it's just a natural part of life, and you can teach your children, you can talk about it, you can talk with your lovers about what you like, about what you don't like, and it's not this whole secret, hidden, taboo subject anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Now, you talk about genital anatomy types, and you talk about female and male types. Let's talk about the female types first.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you, I just did a presentation here in Phoenix called Ignite Phoenix, and you get 20 slides in 5 minutes, and I presented the sexual anatomy types for the first time publicly outside of a Quodoushka workshop.
Right.
And afterwards, everyone just wanted to know their types, and it was fascinating. And the whole reason why you might want to know your sexual anatomy type is, first of all, your sexual anatomy affects the way that you like to receive and give pleasure. So for a woman, the location, the physical anatomy of where her G-spot is, of how deep she is, of where her, opening is, and so forth, her taste, these kinds of things, all of these determine her sexual anatomy type. And because the erogenous zones, where they are located physically, how close they are or how far apart they are, that determines things like how long it will take her to reach orgasm. It will determine how different positions are for her. How deep is she? It will determine, where is her, in Quodoushka we call it the fire trigger instead of the G-spot. It's called the fire trigger. And there's beautiful, beautiful names in Quodoushka. In fact, the woman's vagina is called Tupuli.
Okay.
And can you say that? I'd love to hear that in your accent.
Twakuli? Is that what you said?
Tapuli.
Okay. Tapuli. Okay, Tapuli.
Yes, yes, and I dare you to say that without smiling.
I can. I'm smiling right now. So.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and that's one of my favorite chapters too. Is called The Natural Language for Sex, because when we are learning about our sexual anatomy, we learn these names like the labia and the Venus mound, the corpus spongium, and the fallopian tubes, and all these just Latin names. And so the Quodoushka names are really beautiful, like the Valley of Pleasure, the Sacred Fire Trigger. They're poetic names. The Valley of Pleasure, the Secret Cave. For the male, it's his snake and the sacred jewels. And I like to say, when it comes to teaching ourselves or our children about sexuality, what would it be like for us to introduce the whole concept of sex with regards to nature and associations with nature? And that's what's beautiful about indigenous cultures is there's a natural connection to nature. And so the associations, the language is very, very beautiful. It's not so technical.
It's really interesting. Okay. Now, in your book, you talk about 9 types of orgasmic expression. That raised an eyebrow when I saw that. So, do tell.
Well, let me just say one more thing about the anatomy types, because we just touched upon the woman a little bit. So there's 9 types.
Okay, that's fine. I
thought we went by that because that's like I think that's the whole hottest part of the book, actually, Sandy.
Okay. Right.
You could be a sheep woman or a wolf woman, a buffalo woman, a deer woman, and there's 9 different types. For the man, you can be a coyote man, a horse man, a pony man or a bear man.
Right.
And each of the types has different physiological qualities and also a different demeanor, a different way that you like to be courted, a different way that you like to receive or give pleasure, and so forth. You have a different sexual persona according to your anatomy type. And so this is, I think one of the most fascinating parts of the book. It's one of my favorite things that we teach in Quodoushka. When people find out, there's so much pride, when you find out you're whatever type you are, a horseman or there's an elk man or you're a wolf woman. And, for example, the wolf woman, her natural proclivity, she likes to howl like the wolf. And some types can have an orgasm in less than a minute. Other women, because of their anatomy, it can take them naturally up to about a half an hour or longer to reach orgasm. And this is because of their sexual anatomy type. So you see, it removes a lot of shame, and it removes a lot of, misconceptions, because you can then say, well, this is my sexual anatomy type, and hopefully I wrote the book, so there's drawings and everything, and you can read it, and you can, find your own sexual anatomy type, and I hope it'll be good bedtime reading. People, read it together in bed and find out, okay, what type are you, and so forth.
And for the audience, there is some drawings. I have seen them. They're there.
Yeah.
And they're all natural, so don't worry about it. Okay. Let's talk about the 9 types of orgasmic expression.
Well, these 2 are related to nature. So, for example, you can have an avalanche orgasm. You can have a water orgasm. You can have a fire orgasm, a forest fire orgasm. And different orgasms are healing in different ways. So, for example, if you have what's called a wind orgasm or a north orgasm, you might have that orgasm, that type of an orgasm, which also usually comes with, a lot of howling, and you really let go in a lot of passion. When you have that kind of orgasm, it typically means that you have a lot of stress, and so that type of orgasm will relieve the mental stress. Other times you might have, a water orgasm or a wave orgasm because you have emotional challenges, emotional difficulties. And so this kind of orgasm comes with sometimes a lot of laughter or a lot of crying or a lot of wetness, a lot of juiciness. And so you'll have a south or a water orgasm when your body needs that kind of healing. And then there's, earthquake orgasms, and they're all good. But the idea is that you can learn which kinds of orgasm, there's different kinds of orgasms that we have all the time. And it's also, every one of them is very, very beautiful.
Wow. Wow, the book really does open one's mind to sexuality in a very kind and gentle way.
Well, thank you.
Now, you mentioned about increasing the intensity of orgasms. How do you do that?
Well, that is a very important part of our sexuality. In essence, what it means is that most of the time we don't have a really high level of orgasm because we don't build up enough charge. And what I mean by we don't build enough charge is that we don't have enough foreplay. We don't have enough arousal, enough stimulation prior to, having intercourse, let's say. Mm-hmm. You've probably heard the idea that it's a good idea to slow down, right?
Yeah.
And so in that slowing down, and in the book there's lots of, different ways, things that you can do while you're slowing down. In that building of pleasure, you're building up charge, and you're building up charge, and you're building up charge, so that when you have a discharge, when you have an orgasm, when you have a climax, then you will gain energy. We lose energy. We can even lose energy by having orgasms because we haven't built up enough connection. We haven't built up enough arousal, tease, stimulation, pleasure, spontaneity, and fun. So if we just go straight into the act of pleasure, so to speak, and we move, it's not only quickly, because sometimes you can build a fast charge, and all of this can happen in 5 minutes. I'm all for quickies, so to speak. You know what I mean? You can have a lot of passion quickly. It's not always about being very slow. Sometimes you can have a very fiery orgasm, and that's very healing too. But the idea here is the main idea to increase the intensity of your orgasms is to learn things that you can do that will build that energy, that will build up the charge in your body, so that when you have an orgasmic release, it is much more powerful. I mean, people that have learned these practices, they're just not the same, because you have just much higher level of orgasms by doing different things together. I don't know if you wanted to get into this, but there's something in there called chakra merging, and this is one of the practices we do to build the energy. You start by it's a breathing practice. It's a mutual breathing, and you move up through the chakras until it starts in the first chakra at the genitals and moves up through the central channel of the body until it reaches and then moves out the head through, a explosion of energy. And so this is a wonderful thing to do to increase your sexual energy while having intercourse, before having intercourse, in between having intercourse. And so these are there's some practices in the book that will give you ways that will intensify and increase the intensity of your orgasmic releases.
Wow. Now, Chapter 12 in the book talks about sexual healing practices. Let's talk about that for a few minutes, please.
Well, that was what I was just beginning to talk about. The chakra merging is in there. One of the basic concepts of Quodoushka is that there are invisible things, invisible energies that I think your listeners are probably familiar with. We call them fibers in Quodoushka, where there are energy pathways that move from the body, that when we become more sensitive to these fibers that emanate from our bellies, when we become more sensitive to these places, then our touch becomes more keen, our senses become more aware, we feel more. So this translates into our orgasms. Because when we orgasm, it's not just the physical body that is actually experiencing transformation. It's our whole energetic body. So our whole energetic body includes, there's teachings in that chapter about what's called our shields. And briefly, that's about, there's a part of us that is like a little girl or a little boy. There's a part of us that I call the adult worrier, because we're always worried about the future. And those places are where we typically reside energetically. We're childish, or feeling like a victim, or we are worried about what's going to happen. And so that produces a very limited orgasmic response. When we tap into the other energetic places of our shields, which are timeless, which keep us in the present moment, and there's teachings in the book about how you stay present in the moment, then we experience a much greater feeling of arousal. We are feeling much more connected, because all of these energetic places in the body, it's like we learn how to turn the switch on. So then it's more than just two physical bodies, seeking physical release. It's also the energetic bodies dancing and playing together with joy.
Okay. We are discussing the brand new book, The Sexual Practices of Quodoushka.
Quodoushka.
Quodoushka. There you go.
Yes.
First mistake. Quodoushka with Amara Charles. Okay, you talk about sustaining the passion of intimate unions. What do you mean by intimate unions?
Well, anyone that we have intimate connection with, whether it's through sexual expression or otherwise. I mean, we have, intimate connections with our families, with, our siblings, and with friends. Some of those connections, we have a lover. Now that's a different kind of intimate union. The highest expression of an intimate union is someone that you really want to make love with and who you feel like you'd like to spend your life with, and you just want to be with them over and over and over again, sexually. And so the highest expression of our intimacy is someone who we choose to be sexual with.
Amara, do people who are married or have long-term partners of the opposite sex or the same sex, do they come to you for counsel when they're kind of feeling off steam and losing interest in their partner?
Well, yes, and I have clients that are just really seeking, like, whoa, man, we just hit a wall. They're thinking about, getting divorced, and as we know, the issues with sexual, relations are the big part of the marriage. I mean, if you're not making love, really, what is the purpose of being in an intimate union? And, it's either financially you're having difficulties or you're having, sexual difficulties, and these greatly affect our communication and our passion and so forth. So, yes, I definitely have people coming to me to restore their passion, their creativity, and it's not only sexual, but I do specialize, obviously, in restoring the sexual connection. But I also, Sandy, have a lot of people these days who, let's say, they really have it going on. They are, they're curious. I mean, a lot more people are interested in Tantra and all of these things. And so some people come not just because they're really, really, hit the wall. They also come in this because they want more. And like, what else is there? Where can we go? I mean, is there more? And, Quodoushka says, oh my goodness, yes. I mean, there is a great deal more. So we really have, both kinds of people. Many of us, even if we have it going on, we still have these deep places of wounding and places where we can liberate our sexual energy, where we can, have greater self-love, we can have greater self-worth, we can have greater and deeper self-acceptance. And so the Quodoushka teachings are very, very deep in this way because they really help to, liberate. And that's why I spend so much time talking in the book about, unlocking our conditioning because you can't just have free sex and be all happy and energetic and have great orgasms when you have all of this stuff tangled up inside you. You've got to spend some time, sifting out the dark shadows. And what I like to say about the dark shadows, the places that are hidden inside of us, is that, when you plant a seed, you got to put it in the dark earth, right? And that's where the nutrients come in. So when you put a seed in the earth, and it takes some time, and so you got to take some time looking into those shadows. Well, pretty soon that little sprout's going to start growing up, and it's just wanting to reach the sun. And so, we say that in Quodoushka, we say, we are like flowering trees, and we naturally move towards the light. And yes, we have shadows, and yes, we must contend with our shadows in order to be fully expressed as a human being. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Now, you've been doing Quodoushka since the 90s, early 90s. Is this the first book you've written on
yes,
Quodoushka?
It is the very first book.
You've been at it long enough.
It's funny, Sandy, because, I've been teaching for, like I said, like 25 years or so. And I can teach the Quodoushka. It's a 4-day experience. And I can teach the Quodoushka blindfolded. And yet it took me 2 years to write it down. It was really interesting, the whole process of writing this book. And one of the reasons is because I decided in the book that what made Quodoushka alive in modern times was people's stories. And I knew so many people's stories of, it's not just about giving like a practice or an exercise or a teaching. It's about listening to people's stories. And I have such a variety of stories in the book that, my hope is that people will hear their story. People that have been married and people starting new relationships, people with children. And the question of how you teach your children always comes up in my workshops. Once the person has started to feel connected again and feel more liberated with their own sexual energy, they want to naturally give to others. They want to teach their children in a respectful way. And we don't have that way in our schools, in our our systems. I mean, I've presented at universities, and I'm finding that the people are still getting these, just don't do this and don't do that, and that's their sexual education. They don't know, anything about orgasms, about how to give pleasure. They don't know how to move through it's like they have had no education, and then you're supposed to get in these relationships, and you get married and you have some sex, and the chances 9 will get you 10. There's going to be some problems, okay? And so I was teaching in some universities to 20, 25-year-olds and stuff, and their education, they figure stuff out by themselves, but as well as I do, Sandy, that's where a lot of the mistakes occur. They're not taught about respect, and they're not taught about how to care for each other's feelings and that kind of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, the sharing of knowledge amongst human beings, that's essential for success of the species, whether it's in lovemaking or farming or anything. So, and I think today so much information is sheltered off and lost for centuries.
Definitely. I just read today that the New York City is now you have mandatory sex education in schools. I thought, oh, good, wonderful. But when you look at what the education is, it's, this is, HIV, and this is how, you get chlamydia, and all of these, horror stories. And so that's not sexual education. That's teaching math, but you're only teaching, how to make a bomb that will blow people up. I mean, that can happen as a result of math, but there's a lot more to math than just that one aspect. So, yeah, those things are important to teach, but I feel that my passion is that the real education that people need, particularly teens, they need information about what to do with their feelings and, how to approach a girl, how to approach a lover with respect. How do you draw out their beauty? How do you talk about this in a system where, you could get arrested for, talking about things openly? I mean, it's crazy.
Indeed.
It's crazy.
It is. Yes. You can buy the book, The Sexual Practices of Quodoushka, on Amazon.com and in other major bookstores. A link to the Amazon.com book page is on the Universal Learning Series website. Amara, when is your next workshop and where?
Well, my next workshop is in North Carolina, and it's on the 18th to the 20th of this month in August. And then after that, I'm going to Chicago, Quodoushka in Chicago, October 20th through the 23rd. And that one is, the one in North Carolina, I only have room for 2 more people, and the one in Chicago is already filling up. There's 4 levels of Quodoushka, by the way, and so you do the first level, the second, the third, and the fourth, and so on. I'll be doing another one in January in Phoenix. So I do travel, and I will be presenting Quodoushka, throughout the year, about 4 or 5 more times, over this year. So you can check out my website at amaracharles.com, and I'll have, the updates, all the workshops and things that I'm offering.
All right. And for the listeners, a good website. You will not be disappointed when you go there. It is all about sensuality and practice and healing and good stuff. So, right. Well, thanks very much, Amara, for coming on to the show and talking about your lovely book. Congratulations on it.
Thank you, Sandy. You're fantastic, and I have really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, please visit Amara Charles' website at amaracharles.com, the book, The Sexual Practices of Quodoushka. It's good stuff. Thanks for listening to the Universal Learning Series radio show, where we discover the spiritual and scientific universe.